Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Heather Luther with the Humboldt County Growers Alliance, and I want to thank you for tuning in today on our new program, House of Humboldt. This is a virtual business-to-business networking forum, and our primary goal is to connect Humboldt County's world-renowned cannabis industry to licensed operators from across the state of California. We're going to interview and showcase the Humboldt businesses who are forging the way in this industry with the end goal of connecting with and educating consumers. A lot goes into this precious plant, and we are here to take you on that journey from seed to sale. This involves everyone doing their part, from plant touchers to planners to ancillary businesses. And yes, plant touching is an official industry term. Our adventures on House of Humboldt will take us from nurseries to cultivators to distributors to retailers to consumers and back again full circle. So I'm going to give some quick background, and then we're going to jump right into our first interview. So here at the Humboldt County Growers Alliance, our members aren't just growing, curing, developing, and selling the world's best cannabis and its derived products, but day by day, they are creating a balanced way of living, and many have been doing it for decades. Often, well, pretty much always, the finer things in life take a lot of hard work. The trailblazers and seed hunters, business owners, and valued employees in our membership will attest to this. Like others who have led the way in this industry, many of our members have suffered from the police state, and we continue to right the wrongs of military enforcement and eradication efforts through social equity programs like Project Trellis and others throughout California. Our work isn't just about cannabis. It's about building a socially equitable, environmentally sustainable, and prosperous community with integrity of our landscape at top of mind. We work together to build the dream while expressing ourselves uniquely through our businesses, sharing our culture, and advocating for a better world for people, plants, planet, and prosperity. Whew, that's a mouthful. Are you a social equity business? We especially want to connect with you. We are incredibly privileged to live here in California, and I'm particularly fond of Humboldt County, but I'll admit I'm biased. Like many of our members, I grew up getting dirty in this soil and climbing up to the tippy top of the trees. I've often sat on the banks of our beautiful rivers, stared up at our towering trees, and walked our lush trails, wishing I could bottle up the essence of the Humboldt experience and share it with my friends around the world. Well, with cannabis, now we can. If only you could smell these terps from across the interwebs. But in these times of COVID, you don't necessarily have to come here to experience Humboldt. And we don't necessarily want a ton of visitors right now anyway. But please, step into our virtual house, our Humboldt home, and see all that we have to offer. So we're going to start our house of the tour, shall we? Our first stop is to meet the babies at Humboldt Highline Nursery. So we've got Riley Loughton here with us today, who's going to be talking about Humboldt Highline's specialty of nursery production. Hi, Riley. How are you doing today?
Hi, Heather. I'm great. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. Really appreciate you joining us as the official guinea pig for House of Humboldt in our video production series.
Well, happy to be here.
Great. Well, I guess, we'll just jump right into it. We've got some questions here for you, and I don't know a whole lot about nurseries, so I'm looking forward to this conversation. We're going to start at the top here, talking about pathogens and pests, which seem to be an inherent factor in all farming. So I'm curious, how does Humboldt Highline stay ahead of the problem and maintain clean products?
So it's a handful for sure. As any farmer knows, pathogens and pests are an inherent factor in your day-to-day life. But the approach that we've taken at Highline is to always try and take a preventative approach. We'd like to not act reactively whenever we can. Proactive approach means, doing proper scouting on a regular basis, having your entire employee base, your entire crew trained on how to identify things when they're working with the plants, even if pest identification isn't their issue or pathogen identification isn't their duty. Having people all on the same page and knowing who to go to inform anybody of potential outbreaks or issues, and making sure that they get handled in the most quick fashion that we can. Along with that goes having knowledge of your products, having knowledge of the pests that you're dealing with, and knowing which products you should use in order to treat different issues. I hear time and time again of people seeing an issue and just jumping online and finding the first thing that they see and trying to throw it at their plants and really not having great luck. So it comes with, having a good knowledge base of what you're trying to deal with, what you're expecting to have issues with based on your surroundings, and then also doing the proper research to find those products that really can help you alleviate those issues. And really coming back to the training of employees, having good standard operating procedures in place so that everybody is trained appropriately and is comfortable with how to go about managing or alerting of an issue, who to go to, what the hierarchy is, and also the intricacies of each standard operating procedure, whether it be sanitation, or how to not work upstream from where the product is coming from, basically meaning don't walk in from a mother house to the clone room without proper suits or whatever needs to be, whatever precautions need to be taken. So all in all, really just trying to take a preventative approach.
Great, thank you. And then could you talk a little more in detail about the steps that Highlines taking from start to finish to ensure a superior product?
Absolutely. So I would say, primarily the utmost important thing is that we have a great crew at Highline, and every person on our crew is invested into these plants. It's not just a paycheck for them. They really take pride in what they're doing. That's something that every employer would love to have. And we have found that here at Highline. We're always, whether it be me or my coworkers that I work with or oversee, we're always doing research. We're always trying to talk with other farmers and get online and see what the new science is that's coming out so that we can always stay at the very front of the learning curve there and try and put these new practices or new knowledge into place so that we can not only make our systems better, more efficient, and put a better quality product out, but also to pass that savings or that benefit along to our customers, which really is, Humboldt County and the state of California as a whole. We may, as farmers, know more at this point than other people, but as any farmer knows, there's always more to learn. We're learning on a daily basis, whether it be up on our flower farms or here at the nursery, or talking from other people's experience too. We're always learning and passing that knowledge forward to give our customers the best clones at the best possible prices. And then I guess, a little bit further into depth, more specifically the structured SOPs throughout every department and how those intertwine between departments to make sure that, when one person is doing their job or one department is doing their job exactly how we should be, that really great effort isn't being mitigated by another department, maybe cutting a corner or not thinking that the SOPs are all that important when every little detail is so important. And we really try and keep that attention to detail. That the SOPs go as far as, regular pathogen and viral testing, regular pathogen and pest scouting, going out and actually, tapping plants over a tray and making sure that nothing's falling out, looking for any kind of signs of damage on the tissue, proper pest identification and product selection again, culling and selecting the most thriving mothers to take our cuttings from, whether that be to resupply our mother sections and create big sections to create the cuts for our farmers, or whether that just be finding the best moms to send clones to our customers from. So, on that same line, as far as SOPs, property-wide sanitation SOPs, we've worked with a couple of labs in the area and have kind of gotten some consulting from them on how can we better our systems and foot baths before you go into the greenhouses to stop any pathogens coming in with you, lab coats going from greenhouse to greenhouse so that we're not transferring anything that potentially could be happening in one house to the other house, making sure that we have the best separation that we can there. And again, coming back to the whole upstream thing, don't go from the mother houses to the clone room. Don't go from a section that is more prone or predisposed to being a little bit more active when it comes to pests and pathogens, and taking it into a place where we've already screened all of that tissue and that plant material coming in to be the best of the best. Only plugging the best cuts that we take, really filtering out anything that's not worth it, even if it could potentially root and be a successful plant. If it's not up to our standard, we don't want to put our name on that. So we just, we're very selective with how we do that. And then at the end of that whole process, really rigorous sorting of our rooted clones to make sure that the trays that we send to our customers are really the best of what we have, and making sure that anything that is not up to that standard is not going to our customers.
Great. So it sounds like you guys really have quality and integrity at top of mind
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
time. And
And I
it
think
seems like
go ahead, sorry.
the SOPs for people in your business are just as important as the SOPs for the plants.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think that one of your following questions is going to speak to that a little bit, but we take a lot of pride in what we do. And, a lot of our, this is our life, more than just a job. This is what we love to do. And, you know, farmers, I think tend to be a little bit prideful. We're artists in a sense. And so it's, subjective, but we take a lot of pride in our work and we like to pass that along to our customers for sure.
Amazing. Well, my next question for you, Riley, what beneficial bugs has Highline found to be the most useful in your IPM protocols? And IPM, for anyone who's listening and isn't aware, is integrative pest management, correct?
Correct.
Yay.
So we use a handful of different beneficial products, whether that be, beneficial fungi that help and act as a pesticide on their own without needing to resort to, they call them bioinsecticides. So without having to resort to a chemical treatment, which is a very important part of the IPM regimen as well. It has its place for sure, but anything that we can do to try and reduce our dependence on the chemicals, we like to do, and anything that we can utilize, it's a little bit easier on the environment and potentially easier on any beneficial bugs that we are using in the foliage or in the soil itself. So for foliar dwelling pests such as spider mites and thrips, we rely on predatory mites. And I'm not even going to say these scientific names because I know I'm going to butcher them. But if you go on, any of the insectary sites, you can look up these beneficial bugs that they use for different areas of the plant. So there's specific soil mites. I'll give one a shot. Phytocoelus persimilis is one of them. And basically what these do is they improve the efficacy of the predatory mites, to improve the efficacy of predatory mites, we recommend using the beneficial bugs in combination with chemicals or bioinsecticides so that you are, how do I say this? It's kind of like when a farmer amends their bed but still feeds liquid at the same time. You're giving yourself a little bit of forgiveness on both sides. So if you missed anything in your dry amendment package, you're filling that void with your liquid and vice versa. It kind of is doing the same thing here. So when you're using a beneficial bug, they're great for preventative. And if you're in the early spring or late fall when the bugs aren't quite as active, they're awesome. But when you hit those summer months where it's really hot, and the populations are just multiplying so rapidly, sometimes you need to use these beneficials in combination with chemicals or bioinsecticides in order to maintain the success there. But basically the soil mites will go in and they'll attack the larvae of anything that has been overwintered in the soil. And in a system like ours, overwintering is kind of a loose term because we don't really have a winter in a greenhouse. We're running year round and it is basically 80 degrees and sunny in there every day regardless of what it's doing outside. So with that being said, the pests still have areas they like to lay their eggs. So for spider mites, they overwinter in the soil. So they'll lay their eggs in the soil. And then when that time in the season comes next, when it's warm enough for them to start to hatch and repopulate, if you use the soil mites, you can get in there and you can kind of lower those populations of larvae down, if not completely mitigate them altogether. And then likewise, there's beneficial pests that you can use in the foliage, and they come in a variety of ways. You can either get them in bottles where I've seen guys fill up little Dixie cups and hang the Dixie cups with paper clips from the branches, so it's kind of acting as like a self-made sachet, so where the mites will crawl up the plant and then disperse themselves evenly throughout the foliage. Newly released over the past year or so, they've also started coming out with these sachets that are actually time released, so they'll have different age larvae inside that are released at different points, so you can apply the sachet to the plant, and then over the next 2 weeks to a month, it'll slowly continue to keep the populations consistent regardless of whether you have a lot of food for them to thrive on or not. And then there's a couple other things aside from the beneficial mites. We have a beetle, it's called a rove beetle, Delotia coriaria, and those we've used specifically to help fight our root aphid populations and really help to reduce the root aphids as well as thrip pupae. And they're a little bit bigger of a bug, a beneficial bug, but they are soil dwelling, and it really has helped us, like I said, to meet where the chemicals are missing, and help us kind of cover all bases there. And then, I mentioned the beneficial fungi. There's a couple of different active ingredients that are okay to use for cannabis. And we've noticed that with proper use and proper implementation of those products, we've found really great success with mitigating some of our issues that we've seen in the past. And we went, one of my IPM lead and I went up to the Biocontrols Conference in Portland in February, and got to talk to a lot of great people and the reps of the companies, some of the scientists from the companies of the products that we're using, and really get a better understanding of how to properly use them and really use them to their fullest potential. And that has allowed us to really take these beneficial fungi back and adjust our systems a little bit, and really have seen a huge increase in their efficacy.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I guess, the last thing on that front is the sprays. Anything that we use that's aside from chemicals. We use a couple of products from Marone Bio, Venerate, Grandivo, and we've also implemented Regalia into the mix as well. And those are bioinsecticides. They're great products. They're, really, you can use them in flower all the way up to the very end. I know flower farmers that do that, especially if they're, going to extract or something where the flower doesn't really need to have that great of bag appeal. But here at the nursery, we have the luxury of being able to use a little bit heavier stuff that flower farmers can't always use throughout their runs. But, even with that being said, we really have enjoyed using these beneficial biocontrol products. And, the Grandivo, it helps with spider mites and thrips, and it's really more of a preventative approach. And then the Regalia is a fungicide, which helps with powdery mildew or any kind of mold. You can use it as a soil drench. You can use it as a foliar spray. Really, it's been an awesome addition to our quiver with these products coming out, and really kind of actually being relabeled and fine-tuned for cannabis specifically, whereas before we kind of had to fall into this, is it vague enough to include cannabis? And now they're actually making products specifically for us, which is so nice to see.
That's great. Well, I'm also over here taking notes for my home garden, so I hope that's okay.
Well, you can always text me too if you need any other answers.
Appreciate that. So my next question, there's so much out there. So as a nursery, what are you looking for specifically when sourcing genetics?
Oh boy, a lot of things. So obviously the most obvious, probably 5 or 6 factors, is potency. How high is it going to test CBD, THC wise, whatever you're looking for there. How is it going to yield? Is it going to be more of a designer exotic? Is it going to be a cash crop, bread and butter of your farm? And everybody's, some people like both. Some people have a place on their farm for both of those, and the market wants both of them. So, we take into account both of those things, whether, just yield in general. And then, of course, terpene content, mold resistance, pest resistance. And then, the last thing that I really look for, not really for the whole season, but for specific times in the season, is cold tolerance. So what strains will do well in an early season plant out for those of us that are running light depths and trying to get potentially 3 runs out of our year, or 4 runs if you have the luxury of being in a place where your microclimate is good that good year round, and if you have supplemental lighting or so forth. But those are kind of the 5 or 6 things that we look for as a basis. And then we, a little bit more in depth, we really look for genetics that meet all of those base criteria, but also making sure that we have a diverse enough inventory of strains and genetics to meet the needs for different times in the season. So if we're going to replace, so say, we just pulled something that's really good in cold weather out of the quiver. Either it's just kind of played out, nobody's really that excited about that flavor anymore, or we just want to get something fresh in there. We always try and bring something back in that will meet that same criteria. So if we're pulling a cold weather strain out, we're going to put another cold weather strain right back in. And that's kind of something that we'll be looking for specifically. And then vice versa, we like to make sure that at different points in the growing season, we're creating our mother sections to support the demand that's going to be drawn there. So middle of summer, people love to run sour, and we want to make sure we have those sections available to create the cuts that we need to supply the county and the state with what they need. So, I think that when looking at what we're trying to phase out we like to try and, again, be proactive and be preventative in a sense, in that we already have something on deck that we've pheno hunted or have worked with another nursery or another breeder who's done the pheno hunting, and know that we have that on deck, and when we're ready to phase it in, we just flip and go. So
Great. Well, besides being such a wealth of knowledge, what would you say sets Highline apart from other nurseries?
um, I I think it's going to sound kind of cliche, but our roots, being rooted in Humboldt, that's actually one of our taglines. Um, our owners have lived here their entire lives, and they have been friends their entire lives, and they are, you know, generational farmers of Humboldt County, and we have an incredible access to the knowledge base that comes with that. All of the trials and errors that they've already gone through, and also those trial and errors helping us to really filter through this new knowledge that we're getting from scientists, because sometimes you get that knowledge and it's not super useful. But if you have a little bit of background, or maybe have a little bit of experience on some peripheral part of what they're talking about in that new knowledge, it really helps to set us ahead of other people or other businesses in the industry. I think furthermore, on top of that, we view our business at Highline from the perspective much wider than only focusing on a profit margin. We supply our owners with starts for their flower farms, and many of our other customers who are sourcing clones for their flower farms have grown up with the owners and are somewhat of extended family to the owners. So we take great pride in knowing that we're supplying our longtime family friends and extended family with, and our local economy as well, but with the foundation from which to have a successful harvest and to run a successful business. I think what sets us apart from other nurseries potentially, and I say this with experience dealing with other nurseries before, becoming a part of Highline or working with them directly, and also working with other nurseries throughout, this preseason or last year or the year before, we, even if you aren't a family friend or a longtime friend of the owners here at Highline, you're going to get treated as if you are. We have that very high standard for customer service, and we, aside from just getting a really stellar clone or really stellar start for your garden, you're going to get that customer service that matches that stellar start too. So
That's awesome. And inclusivity and quality, a couple
exactly.
of great things.
And, we're very open to, giving customers advice, if they have any questions about, the genetics or, what the spacing should be on a greenhouse because of, is it going to stretch X amount, or, what's your guys' experience with it? And we like to, having flower farms, having the owners have their own flower farms, it also helps with, having some testers out there and getting experience before we introduce things into our inventory for sale, and having this really good knowledge to give to our customers. And, we want to be successful. In order for us to be successful, all of our customers have to be successful too. So we want to just pass that knowledge along as best we can.
Great. Thanks. My next question, what would you say are the most important steps a farmer can take in the first few weeks to ensure his clones will thrive?
This is going to probably sound cliche too, but the one major thing that I see over and over again is people overwatering their starts at the beginning. They have this inclination to think, well, this is just such a baby, it's so fragile, we need to just give it way too much attention. And realistically, that ends up biting them in the butt a lot of times. And I think that's probably one of the major things, and that can lead to just general suffocation of the roots, root rot, and also just stunting in general. Even if you overwater at the beginning and then they end up growing through it and thriving, you're going to be set behind a week, 2 weeks, or something like that. But as far as like the system goes, I would say preventative inoculation of beneficials at the beginning. We use a couple of products to help to outcompete and set your plants up with the best potential for success against these negative pathogens or pests. So we use trichoderma as one of the beneficials that we use. It helps to provide fight against fusarium, which is basically a root rot disease, which then once infecting the roots becomes systemic and travels up the vascular tissue through the stalk, and it'll start to basically kill your plant one branch at a time from the bottom up. And fusarium, as we've come to learn, is an inherent part of nature. A lot of us, if we're lucky, have pretty open space up on the hill to farm in, where we have either cleared trees in the past or logging has cleared trees in the past and left big grassy open meadows. And in those meadows, as we've learned, is basically just a giant bank of fusarium. So around many, many people's greenhouses or hoops, whatever you're running, or even your outdoor plants, the fusarium can blow as a spore from the grassy knolls next to your gardens right into your plants, into your soil, and then infect your plant. And if you're not treating with things that can be out competing these bad things, you could potentially find yourself in a world of hurt. So, another couple simple things is like bacillus is great, mycorrhizae when you're transplanting, to give your plants the best uptake possible, so that their immune system is the best to fight off anything that your applications aren't out competing. I would say, probably coming back to kind of the overwatering thing, looking at like pot size and transplanting and that kind of stuff, I would say don't allow your starts to become root bound. If you find, I know it's easier said than done, because a lot of us don't have the luxury of having huge nursery spaces on the hill, or even if you're not on the hill, sometimes the infrastructure, you just don't have the capital to invest in a giant nursery space, or don't have the square footage available to do it. And but I say this: do your planning right. If you're going to have not enough space, make sure you don't get your clones too early, and make sure that you're ready for them when they come, so that you don't end up with a plant that's stressed coming out of the nursery and then doesn't really thrive to its full potential. Because what I've found, and what I think many other people have found in the industry, especially with seed starts, but clones as well, when you get to a point where you're root bound on your clone or your start in your nursery, you go to plant that out, even if you rough it up a little bit and get the roots to kind of dangle again. In my experience, that root ball, when you're going back and clearing out those root balls at the end of the run, are never as stout as if you would have really properly transplanted your plants and gave them the root space that they need to create that structure that you want, to create those flowers that you want. I think that is easier said than done, like I said, but it also comes with training your employees and making sure that everybody on your farm is on the same page. And if you designate one person to take care of that part, so that that part is being dialed and it's the same every time, and that person that's in charge of that has their eyes on it and knows, hey guys, if we don't get these things in their bed soon enough, we're going to end up in a world of hurt. So either we need to make some space to transplant these and bump them up a little bit, or we need to speed up our systems in order to get them into the greenhouse faster. I think these are pretty simple things, but I think that these are questions we get a lot from customers too. And I think that, these simple things that seem very small when we're talking about them here can have huge, huge effects downstream when you're at the end of your flower run, and, can go from seeing a plant that just didn't fill in its space to a plant that absolutely crushed it. And, that you would just want to take the most pictures of and share with all your friends and family, and brag about it. So.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to sum that up with, for people and plants, you need planning and proactivity.
Yes.
So.
Absolutely.
Sorry,
okay. Now you have to sum up for me.
What's that?
Am I rambling? Is that why you have to sum up for me?
No, I just I'm also in my head drawing a lot of conclusions between what I do for my own health in my body and what you're doing for your plants in the nursery, which is fascinating. We could do a whole other show on that in the future. So our next, but yeah, we just have a few questions left. So my next one is, most farmers have 3 runs per year or so. And so what strain attributes should they be looking for during the cooler growing period?
Man, I think mold resistance is key. One thing that on our flower farm in Southern Humboldt, we, whether it be on the farm that I'm managing now or farms that I've managed in the past, you always at the end of the season before, you're always like, okay, we need to try and go for 3 next year. Like, why didn't we do that this year? And you plan and you do it, and you get to that point and you have these genetics that you think are going to do well, and you put them in the ground or you put them in your beds, and you get halfway down the run and it's week 5 and you're already seeing mold, because it's either the spring didn't cooperate, Mother Nature didn't want to give it to you, or the strains that you picked just really weren't suited for that. And whether that be because that's what was available or because that's what you really thought was going to crush it. But yeah, I would say mold resistance is probably one of the most key. Looking for genetics that have tight nug structure, and don't have the bud structure to invite spores to come in and sit on different plateaus of the nug, if you will. And so, obviously that kind of leans towards more indica dominant strains, a cookies, or Definitely not a sour, definitely not something on the sativa side, like a Gorilla Glue or something like that, where it just has kind of like more of an open structure, not quite as dense and rock hard. It'll definitely invite more mold. Obviously shorter flowering times, as you're looking at your planning for trying to run 3 runs, that's really, for most of us, the only way we can do it is if we find strains that are 9 weeks or less. And there's great, the genetics are becoming so advanced now, and there's so many hybrids that breeders are working with that have even gotten down. I haven't seen it, so don't quote me on this, but I've heard of strains that are finishing in 6 weeks. I've personally dealt with strains that are finishing in 7, like fully done. Obviously this was like fall run, last run of last year. But yeah, fully done 7 weeks. Trichomes were nice and opaque, and a couple amber here and there, and they were absolutely gorgeous. So I think that short flowering times, to ensure that the starting and end times of the season are not any more drastic than they need to be, meaning you're not starting in February if you can avoid it, and you're not going all the way into December if you can avoid it. Unless you have that microclimate, and if you do, good for you. I'm jealous, but and I would say, talk with other farmers and get feedback on what they've had success with. Because just because you take a strain that does well in cold weather and you cross it with something that has the profile or meets the demographic that you're trying to feed, those crosses don't necessarily mean they're going to carry those characteristics over. Even though it might sound good on paper, it doesn't always play out. And vice versa. Sometimes there's great strains that lean on the sativa side that do absolutely great in cold weather. Like XJ13 is one of the ones that we've experienced, just absolutely crushes first round. You get really good weight. The terpenes are really loud, and it's just a beautiful bud. But we've learned from talking to other farmers and talking to our extended family that I was talking about earlier, and really talking with them about what has done well historically, and also what hasn't done well historically, so that you can avoid those. So like some of the ones that we avoid for spring runs is like OG and sour. We really don't find great success with those. Granted, I'm sure there's some OG and some sour crosses that can do well, but as a general stereotype, those are things that we kind of reserve for the middle, second run or third run of the year, when it's a little hotter and they can really get that heat that they want. And then again, if you insist on growing flavors that fall into these predispositions of not doing so well, talk to other farmers and see what hybrids of those they've worked with that have worked well. And kind of coming back to the indica thing, based on where these strains came from initially, indicas evolved to work in a climate or work in a growing season that's a lot shorter, whereas sativas had more time and had the flexibility to go 10, 11, 12 weeks and finish flowering then. So I would say the strains that developed in places where the seasons are shorter and their plants were evolved with the expectation of it getting colder a lot faster probably do better in weather that is not, the middle of summer type weather. And it also will probably fall more in line with the tighter bud structure, less areas for the spores to get in and settle, and then really kind of, eat the bud from the inside out, which is always the grower's, worst nightmare when they walk into a greenhouse and they are looking from a distance and everything looks great, and then they walk through and they start opening up nuggets and it's just, fuzzy botrytis looking right back at them, taunting them. So
Oh, scary. Taunting, that's a good word for that.
I call it the ghost mold because it kind of sneaks up on you if you're not really fully in tune with your plants and you're not going in there and getting your hands on them, at least once a week, twice a week, something along those lines, and really getting dirty with them, really getting sticky. You can miss it and it can really sneak up on you fast. So
So get in there.
yeah, for sure.
So Riley, does Highline only sell clones, or do you sell starts from seeds as well?
We do not sell starts from seeds. We focus on clones specifically. And, the reason for that really mostly being that most of the farmers in Humboldt County on some level have gone away from outdoor full-term, full-season plants and gone to more of a greenhouse or cold frame light deprivation system. And in those types of systems, there's breeders that are breeding seeds to be more homogeneous and have very consistent phenotypic expressions throughout the seeds that come from a breeding project. But up until this point, we haven't really been all that impressed with that. And obviously, as the industry as a whole hasn't either, because most people have gone to really focusing on clones and getting that and starting their season off with that so that they can have a greenhouse where every single nugget can go into any pound bag from that harvest. Meaning you don't have 4 or 5 plants that look and smell alike, and you don't have another 4 or 5 plants that smell differently that you have to keep separate, and really creates a lot of management headache. And also just for consistency's sake, the market these days is so picky. I call them weed snobs. They are so picky, and if there is, 1 or 2 things, it's very, a lot of the distributors, they joke because they have like a grading scale. If it doesn't meet this, there's $100 off the price. If it doesn't meet this, there's another $100. And so if they're getting a sample unit and they're looking through it and they just really can't make sense of why it's so inconsistent, that's going to leave a really bad taste in their mouth, and it's not going to be something that's going to be really exciting to them. So we've really focused on the clones. And with that being said, I know, not to cut you off, but I know your next question is going to be about the autoflower seeds. So I'm just going to speak about that too. With that being said, about the standard seeds, the photoperiod seeds, likewise, as we weren't really impressed with the consistency between phenotypes and their phenotypic expressions with seeds, we weren't, up until this point, we haven't really been all that impressed as farmers with the advances in autoflower starts as well, whether that be seeds or starts that you buy from a nursery. And with that being said, just recently, we've really started to take note of these autoflower genetics and the breeders that are really working hard with them to meet that need that the market is really missing. And market, I mean, as far as farmers looking for starts, because, there's a lot of people, whether it be Humboldt County or California as a whole, that are still growing full-term plants, full season plants. And they're, seeds are a lot of the time more advantageous for them because they get more vigor and they can get in earlier. They don't have to run supplemental lighting in their nursery in order to keep them in veg and all of these different things. But with that being the case, the autoflower, it leaves this gap in the market where they're really looking for something that they can get 2 runs out of their full-term season and run it a little bit more conventional agriculture, but still get 2 pulls. Or even for us guys in the hills running depths that want to have 2 or 3 runs, but don't necessarily want to pull tarps all the time either, So we've really been taking note of these advances in the breeding and the advances in the genetics that have come, whether that be structure or terpenes and the flavors that you get off of them. And, I'm learning every day. Like I said earlier, we're learning new stuff every day. And this is one thing that's really exciting to me. And, working with breeders and talking to people who have experience with these and really have dedicated a lot of their time and investment and capital and their, just time in their day to learning about and trying to perfect these genetics that have really kind of been looked over for a long time. And that being the ruderalis or the autoflower genetics. And so with that being said, as we're going to be expanding Highline down to Southern California as well as the Central California, which is going to be happening sometime over the next year. It's all coming together very fast, but we would like to be able to meet the need for these farmers that are farming a little bit more conventionally and open up our market for farmers that we're servicing, but also allow those farmers a little bit more flexibility in what they want to do with their season. So I think that people that are running row crops or more conventional style, whether that be berry hoops or just full sun, and they want to get another turn out of their season, or maybe focus on some extracts instead of just growing for flower and kind of diversifying their income a little bit. We see the need, and so we're definitely not overlooking that. And we're just taking the first steps to really start to play around with those genetics and really work with breeders and develop the relationships so that when the time comes and we really want to start to push these, we feel comfortable with it and we have the knowledge to help to provide our farmers with some guidance on how to really go about it to get the best possible outcome from it, for sure.
Thank you. Well, I think what you said about consistency is really fascinating. And with this program, House of Humboldt, as we go further down the line and talk to consumers and retailers and distributors and talk more about branding, and I think that consistency is going to be a common theme and a need in the marketplace from what it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, that's all the questions I had for you. I actually want to make sure that we can get people in touch with you because I think you are a wealth of knowledge and I want to connect people with you who are going to want to talk to you. So how should people get in touch with you?
So they can either reach out via email. There's our website is highlinenursery.com, and there's a contact us page on there. We're located in Fortuna, California, which is just south of Eureka, about 15-25 minutes south. You can reach us by phone as well. Our number is 707-617-2505. That's the phone number to the sales department. Who you'll probably speak with Jeremy, and Jeremy can help you out. He's available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, answer any questions, whether that be about genetics we have or availability, or if you've already purchased clones from us, if you just want to call and ask some questions regarding something that you heard on here, he'll be available. And we have a couple other office staff up here in the office that will be able to help screen calls as well. And they're available anytime, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So, and then we are currently not allowing any visitors to the farm here at the nursery just due to the COVID situation. But I know that you guys mentioned you might be putting together a little video to help people kind of get an idea of what it looks like behind the scenes here. So I guess
totally. And I'll be willing to suit up. I'll wear whatever kind of protective gear you need to protect those mamas. So
I'll set aside a special lab coat for you.
Thanks. So then my other question, I'm realizing we're in the peak of summer already. Are farmers still able to buy teenage plants now?
Yes, absolutely. We are actually just finishing out our expansion, one of our expansions that we're doing here on the farm. We added another 60 by 100 greenhouse, which is going to be basically space for all of our teens. It is, like you said, it's a little late in the season, but there's still people trying to get their plants in. And, whether that be replacing plants that didn't really perform that well, that they're not stoked with, or, they just wanted to try and maximize their square footage that they're paying taxes on. So absolutely. I think that whether that be a clone for a late debt plant out, or a teen for a more full-term use, or a teen for a debt plant out that you just want to plant and flip just like that. So yeah, absolutely. I would say just go ahead and give our sales team a call, and they'll walk you through anything that we have available. And, I would say on that note, we sell out very quick. I want to say by April of this year, we were sold out through, I want to say through August. So if you're interested in some of our genetics, or you're interested in trying to get an order in, definitely call ahead, do your planning like we talked about earlier, and be proactive for yourself, because, we do have some excess inventory sometimes based on, our predictions and having better success rate than we predicted or so forth. But I would say most of our clones are spoken for quite a bit ahead of time, whether that be teens or clones. So.
Good to know. So you're such a good planner, I can tell throughout this conversation. Do you have any other final tips for what farmers can do now to prepare for 2021?
Oh boy, a lot. Let's see. I would say, just looking at how I'm viewing my day to day right now, and how I'm looking towards next season, being a farmer is it's kind of like an oxymoron, because it's so fast paced in how you have to do your planning and how you have to make decisions for the next round before you're even really able to see the full result of what you did in the first round. Meaning, when you're pulling your first harvest down for your first dep, you have to replant that and re-amend and refeed, or whatever you're doing in your system, before you even have a chance to see that finished, dried, cured product, which makes it really hard. But, I would say just really take notes. Be as specific and precise as you can with your data that you collect. And I know that that's easier said than done, because as a farmer, when you have resin all over your hands and you're trying to type something on your iPad or on your phone in the garden and you can't see because the sun's so darn bright, it definitely becomes kind of a monster to deal with. But, we've even on the farm in Southern Humboldt, we've taken the approach of, just making clipboards, having a clipboard for every greenhouse, and having, just quickly documenting what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and making sure that your communication between your team members, as we've all had to become more business people and business men and women over this evolution of our industry, we've had to bring on a lot more team members in order to make that happen, whether it be to handle metric, or to handle your IPM, or to handle, the nursery and the flower garden separately. Really make sure you're all on the same page. Really make sure that you're communicating on a weekly or daily basis. Have your recaps, have your manager meetings and your department lead meetings as often as you need to, in order to really make sure that everybody's on the same page, and that you guys are all working towards that common goal. Because what I've noticed, and whether it be at a big facility like this, or at a smaller flower farm like in Southern Humboldt, no matter what the size is, there are so many intricacies that are going on at one time, and so many wheels turning in different directions, that it's so easy for things to get missed. And actually, one of my employees that we hired maybe 5 or 6 months ago now, he told me a saying that one of his previous employers had told him, and it's, for every corner that you cut, you can count that as 1% off of your total potential success. So say you cut 20 corners throughout your entire 10-week growing cycle, from planting your clone into some dirt to harvesting that flower. If you cut 20 corners, you can only get 80% of what you potentially could have gotten. And the planning is really where that comes in and benefits you down the road, because then you don't have to cut those corners, or you're not inclined to, because you did the prep work in order to have your ducks in a row in that time frame. So
that's a really good reminder for everyone. And I think we're going to finish it off with that. That's a good way to close things out, I think. Thank you so much, Riley. This was fascinating. I really appreciate your time and willingness to share with our community your knowledge base. And I really look forward to coming out to Humboldt Highline next week and seeing you guys in person and donning my lab coat. So thanks again. I hope that to everyone viewing, I hope that you enjoyed this. We'll see you next time. And it's the weekend, so go jump in a river, go hug a tree, get out in nature, and have a good time. Any final closing thoughts from you, Riley?
All those same things. I'm heading to the lake right after I get off today. So, be safe, of course, wear your mask, keep your distance, but yeah, go find your outlet to blow off some steam, and don't let this middle of the season burn you out quite yet. we're almost through the craziness, yep. All those replanting steps, so just push through.
Good encouragement. You got this, y'all.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Riley. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.